What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lights Out F1 podcast. It has been a hot minute. I'm Patrick. That's
Been a
Claire.
while.
Um, the last time we recorded anything was back in China, and a lot has happened since then. Um,
A lot.
yeah. We'll talk about today's results, but just as a quick rundown of everything that has happened recently. Well, I guess recently in the last five races, Lando took his first win in Miami, which Claire's super happy about. I was happy. It was a great
Definitely.
race.
Mhm.
Max won in Imola, but Lando was perfectly on the pace, 2 seconds off of a race win. Very similar to today's proceedings.
Mhm.
Um, Monaco, Charles got his first pole position in Monaco and also took his first race win there, finally breaking his curse. Max won in Canada after what is probably the most exciting race of the season, full of, I think, two or three safety cars. Both Williams go out,
Yep.
both Ferraris go out, and a bunch of teams brought upgrades in that race. And then we get to Spain this weekend, and we had 6 of the 10 teams bring upgrades, and holy smokes, were they good! Um,
Some of them.
yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk through the upgrades first. Mercedes brought a small one. They did a revision to their already somewhat, I would say, controversial, but different front wing, and their front suspension. If you recall, at the start of the season, they had the one of the arms of this suspension was bent, and the front wing had a few extra small components on it that people had questions about. So they did more revisions to that, and they seem to be tampering quite a bit with that. Um, but just to run through the rest of the teams, Red Bull brought an upgrade, Ferrari brought an upgrade, Aston Martin brought a downgrade. Um, Kick Sauber brought themselves a small upgrade package. RB's brought revised brake duct, which is actually a reversion to a previous model. And then Williams gave all the upgrades that were on Alex's car, well, some of them, to Logan's car. Um, yeah, so those are upgrades. Um, your thoughts on the weekend?
Great showing from McLaren. Racing Bulls, RB, Carb, whatever we want to call them.
Mm,
Their upgrades did not help them.
mm-mm.
I was very, just disappointed because they did pretty well in Canada. So
Yeah.
I thought that they would carry that over the momentum, but it was really Alpine who kind of surprised everyone this weekend.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Did they bring upgrades?
Yes.
Yes.
They got all
I don't
of
think we
the
mentioned that.
so Esteban got the upgrade in Canada, and then
Okay.
Pierre got the upgrade this weekend.
Well, Pierre absolutely took advantage of that in qualifying. He had a slow stop during the race that kind of put him, on the back foot,
Mhm.
but he ended up getting P9 and Ocon got P10, so that's good points for Alpine, who have been struggling this season. Controversially, they brought on an advisor. Insert name here.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he's I just know he's controversial because he was a part of Crashgate, I believe, and he's been
Oh,
banned from the sport.
I know who you're talking about. Oh, what's his name?
Lombath. No, 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 no.
No, it's not. No. We'll move on. I'll remember it in a sec.
Yeah, but anyway, so Alpine, they are obviously trying to move in a better direction, but I don't know how they will. This guy's been out of the sport for 10 years, so that just kind of says they don't know what they're doing. They're trying anything. They don't have confidence. Alcon is going to part with the team, which I think for him is probably the best. That
Mhm.
you know, it's not working out for him that well, but
Yeah.
that team, it's just up and down, up and down. I don't know.
Yes.
But they double points finish, so it's great for them. I mean, at Aston Martin's expense, I believe, and probably Haas too.
Yeah. So the person they brought in, Flavio Briatore, um,
Yes.
so, quick backstory for those of you who don't know who that is or why he's banned from the sport. Flavio Briatore came into what was once Renault back in 2000 and I want to say 2000, um, and was snooping around quite a bit. Had some pretty already illegal proceedings on how he was getting around being a team manager. And then Crashgate happened, which was actually orchestrated. Um, it didn't have anything to do with Fernando Alonso's 2006 or 5 championships. It was actually in 2008. it's the most well one of the most recent wins that they've had, but also the most controversial, and it ended up costing Lewis. No, not Lewis. It ended up costing what's his name? Brazilian driver Felipe Massa a world championship actually. So, but it gave Fernando Alonso a win after forcing Nelson Piquet Jr. to crash. Flavio Briatore afterward was found to be in infringements of financial fair play, obviously Crashgate. He did have a hand in what's the Spygate? All
Hmm.
these things. He just across his entire time as a team principal, he has no technical
Sketchy
knowledge of the
dude.
cars. Like he's just a
Yeah.
salesman slash market person. He just for some reason was the team principal of Renault. But yeah, he got banned from the sport. And F1 recently lifted that ban, so he is now an advisor for Alpine slash Renault. Moving on.
See how that goes.
Um, okay, so
Yeah,
Alpine did
moving
pretty good.
on.
They scored
Yeah.
1 and 2. Let's talk about Mercedes. I'm kind of curious how you feel about the way that they finished today's race and everything that's been going on in the background with them.
I mean, Canada, good result.
Mm,
Everything with the leaked emails for Lewis Hamilton is interesting. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that they're sabotaging Lewis at all. I mean, things just happen. Obviously, they're going to favor driver that's staying with the team a little bit. That doesn't. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it is kind of funny because he did come out on top of George this race weekend after the emails were leaked. So people are like, "Oh, see what happens when you know it all comes out, and now they can't sabotage him anymore." No, I think Lewis was rightfully so hard on himself for Canada's result. That was kind of like him fumbling the bag a little bit. And I mean, their recent form is good. They're I mean, taking over Ferrari's spot in the number three team. I'd say right now, I'd say McLaren have got to be the second fastest car, if not on pace with Red Bull.
yeah. Um,
So
yeah, I
yeah.
guess Lewis, I think one thing that people are missing out on is that Lewis is a very outspoken driver when it comes to problems that happen both on
Hmm.
and off the track. We've just seen it
Yeah, for
with
sure.
his, support of Pride, BLM, just a ton of world causes. He has a whole foundation dedicated to it. He doesn't not talk about these things, and he's very open about his personal life as well. There's literally a documentary on it actually. So I think if things were going on in the background and people were frustrated about what's going on with Lewis, I think we would all know by now. It wouldn't just be round 10 of the championship, we would just be figuring out. It's also very normal for a team to stop communicating as much technical knowledge to the driver who's leaving for another competitive team. Um,
Exactly.
you don't want to give the other team any upside. Like you can give Lewis upgrade, sure, but that doesn't mean you're gonna share exactly what they do or how they work
And
anymore.
how it worked out. Yeah. Yeah.
That being said,
Just
this is
smart.
yeah. I think this was always going to be a really strong race for Lewis. I mean, he's won 6 times here, which is the joint most in the history of the track. And he's also been
Hmm.
on pole position 11 times here. So I think it should have been coming. Whether it comes down
Yeah.
to strategy or not, unfortunate for George that he got stuck on hard tires at the end instead of having an extra set of softs. But
Yeah.
all good on Lewis.
Honestly, George getting ahead and then second place, well, first place and then second place, kind of messed his whole race up for a third place
Mm-hmm.
because Lewis had the opportunity not to react to what Max was doing and what Lando was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of worked to Lewis's advantage, even though he said that the plan from the get go was to go on to end on soft. So
Yeah.
I, I don't know. George just got the brunt of a bad
Mm-hmm.
strategy that Sainz did as well.
Yeah. Um, but still 3-4 finish for them, so huge points for the team.
Oh, for
That
sure.
leaves them in third
Back to
place.
back 3-4 finishes
Yeah.
is like that's great for them because every point matters in the fight for fourth, third, and fourth. So
Well, actually,
yeah,
they're still technically in the fight for second. Ferrari's in second place and McLaren's still in fourth. Just
yeah,
because, start of the season, McLaren had to wait for the upgrade just like last year. So they're still doing a bit of catch up. Um, but on the topic
I
of
just like
Ferraris,
towards the end of the season, I think it's going to get a lot closer.
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
with McLaren most likely if Oscar can keep getting points like Lando,
Mm,
fight for second place in the constructors because Lando is now second in the World Drivers' Championship.
mm.
First time in his career, I believe.
Yes, I think the highest he's finished, or actually the highest he's been. This is well right now. Before that was I think the highest he's been is fourth place, so
Hmm.
maybe fifth. He was in that massive tangle of people who was just like all clumped up at the end of last season.
Hmm.
Um, the Ferraris. It's kind of awkward
What is
their position.
what is going on?
Like
Yeah,
they do
they're
really
just
well one race, and then they do really bad. Well, they did great at Monaco,
yeah.
and then did really really bad in Canada. So much so that they were comparable to a Williams. And then this race, they're sitting 5-6 comfortably, being the fourth fastest car.
Yep, exactly. So they don't have an overall well-rounded car. It obviously shined in Monaco, and so those are the kind of like slow speed corners that they thrive on right now. That's what the car is telling them that they are good at. So it just wasn't their track, which they should be. This is like the standard for tracks of building your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where they do all their sim work and stuff. Um, I don't know. They have to figure it out, and I don't know. It's a little discouraging for say like Lewis, who's going to Ferrari. When these
Mm-hmm.
teams keep going back and forth, it's like, oh, did he make the right decision or not? I mean, money wise, probably. Who knows? We'll see next season. Um,
I guess it's an
yeah,
interesting thing. 2020, the Ferrari was a cornering machine, um, and every type of corner was fast, but it was kind of slow on the straights. And I think that was something that we all got to hear pretty frequently. Like they're fantastic on tracks like Baku, Monaco, and Spain. Even they were fantastic. Last year they changed it over so their straight line speed was fantastic, and that cornering machine they had it was gone. And then this year it feels like they found like the perfect median where they're not fantastic in all corners, they're not fantastic in straight line speed, but they're just good enough where they're still competing in the upper half of the points.
yeah. So it's going to be track dependent for them and their results probably this season.
Mhm.
And just kind of sad because I don't know. Two great drivers. They should be competing for wins
Yeah,
every weekend, but it just seems to be the weekends where the car responds the best to that track, which makes sense. But I'm so glad that McLaren is like catching up to Red Bull in this.
mhm,
It's competing well on all these different tracks.
yeah. I'll get to them at the end of this just because I do. There's quite a
Yeah,
bit of those two teams I want to talk about. But
yeah.
just kind of moving down the grid. Haas they finished up in 12th place and
Oh man,
17th.
I think both of them, both Magnussen and Hulkenberg, got penalties throughout the
Yes.
race.
Magnussen got one for a false
We'll
start,
start.
and then Nico got one for speeding in the pit lane. Um,
Yes.
I think it's a pretty common thing for at least one driver at like every other race to get a penalty or a warning for it in practice or in qualifying or on the race, just because the drivers practice braking as late as possible into the start
Hmm.
of the pit lane, and so like one
Yeah.
person doing it's not a surprise. But yeah, unfortunate. I don't think they got any penalty points on the license for it, just because there was no chance for damage to be done. But yeah, they finished in 12 or 11 and 17, and I don't think they had much of an opportunity for points today. Just not the track for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nico only would have had a chance if someone in the top 10 went off and had a DNF or something. But
Mhm.
as again, as last year, there's no safety cars, there was no yellow flags, stuff like that.
Yeah, it is a interesting track. Just because, like you said, it's something that's pretty well noted. They used to do their track. They used to test out their cars here because it has the
Hmm.
perfect range of slow speed, mid speed, and high speed corners. So, like in the last two corners, you'll know whether or not your car's fast through those. Whereas in turn 4, 5, 6, you'll know if your car is good in medium and slow speed corners. Um, that and also because there's such large gravel traps and grass everywhere, there's not much of a chance for a safety car. So unless somebody gets punted an extra 70 meters out to their right or left,
Yeah,
there's no chance for it. Moving down the grid. So this is a team that actually I'm kind of confused by. Aston Martin.
yeah. Where did all their pace go? I just felt like they're both so uncomfortable in the car.
Yeah.
all
Um,
weekend.
I mean, Fernando said it best. Like every weekend they show up, he's not sure what to expect. Like some weekends they get that 2023 start pace, and then other times they get the 2022 end pace. So
Fernando should have waited a couple more races before deciding his contract,
who
in my
knows?
opinion.
I mean,
Who knows? Who
there's no
knows? But
seers in the sport, but like one could arguably say that about Lewis right now because Mercedes are looking better than the Ferraris. So
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but one thing to note about Aston Martin is that they keep on like they're doing the same thing they did last year, and I feel like they're not learning from the mistake. Last year they kept on bringing individual parts, like every single time a part came out of the factory, they were just like, let's bring it to the track, and they would just be spending the first practice always just testing the parts and like seeing which parts worked and didn't. And so this time they brought new parts, and they didn't mesh well with the parts that were already on the car. So we'll probably see reversion back to maybe the Canada spec or even the spec before that, in
that's
order for them
crazy.
to get their
That's
pace
I mean,
back.
that's just it's not a productive way
Mm-mm.
to do that.
To be fair,
But
a
yeah,
lot of teams used to do it like that, and now like it's kind of cool to see it like this now. But essentially, like every team just saves all of their upgrades for one B spec
yeah,
car essentially. We
hmm
saw it from McLaren most notably in the middle of last year, and then into Miami this year. We saw it from even Red Bull at this race. There's just a huge raft of upgrades. Mercedes back in Canada, Williams back in Canada, Alpine back in Canada. So all these teams bringing these like mass upgrades, and then Aston Martin's like, we'll just piece it together as we go. Another team that brought upgrades this weekend was Kick Sauber. Um, how did you feel about their
okay.
race today?
I'll just say one thing. They're doing horrible on track
Yeah.
qualifying, all of that practice. It's but their social media is like top tier right now.
Oh yes, it is.
I don't even know how like Valtteri is like, okay, I'm doing so bad, but let me just make a funny TikTok
Yeah.
or an Instagram reel. But they are so weird and funny. It's
Yes, they
like
are.
I don't even care if they're doing bad. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, the race, they're just like they're just existing in the back. There's no possible chance for points. It feels like at all this season,
Yep.
and it's really confusing.
Mhm.
And I
Um.
think that the time differential between Valtteri and Joe is like the largest gap between teammates this year.
Yes.
I
It's
feel like I saw that
comparable.
somewhere.
It's comparable to Williams.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
one thing to
that's not
note
saying much,
about
Logan.
yeah, one thing to note about Sauber is that they did bring a huge raft of upgrades this weekend. And for as bad it is that they ended 13 and 16, I feel like we actually
Still
got to
better
see.
than Williams and
Well, they did
V-Carb.
too, but I was just gonna talk about the performance of those because I didn't.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. We actually got to see overtakes from them. Valtteri with
Yeah,
a couple nice moves in there. Joe got a couple nice moves, and Joe did finish in front of Valtteri this race. Um, I don't know. It's one of those situations where I hope that they can keep building on this because it feels like they finally turned in some direction, not just like flailing until something works. I just hope
yeah,
they continue
that's
down this
that's
road.
good.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him like, even if it's not points, just going for like, that 11th or 12th place.
Hmm. For sure.
With the knowledge like, they're one step away, similar to how Haas are or Alpine, where it's like they can compete for those bottom 2 points as long as Aston Martin decide not to come back. But yeah, I think they'll do better. I don't know how long it's gonna take them, or even if they're just gonna just be like this all the way up until Audi come in. But they do have Nico Hulkenberg in 2025, so hopefully their qualifying performance should go up. Moving back
Yep.
down, V carb is tough
Yuki also
times.
sped he also got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
That checks out. Yuki did not have a good race today.
He did not have a good qualifying. He did not have a good race. They do not like what they did to the car.
Mm-mm. I don't know. One of the more vocal things that's been said about it's said in F1 is Jacques Villeneuve talking about how Danny Rick is really just a social media driver.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just a random comment. Why did he have to say that when Lance Stroll exists in the sport?
Yeah, but I think
I
Lance
mean,
Stroll's an inevitable person in the sport. Like this is one of those
okay,
situations where,
Danny Rick is a great asset because he does have social media
mhm,
reach. I don't think it's the only reason he's in this sport. If it was, then he could have just stayed on as a reserve driver for Red Bull doing their social media.
mhm.
So
But
I
he wouldn't
think
have been
they
satisfied
saw
with that.
some.
I think Danny Rick
Okay,
has certain assets comparable to like a Valtteri Bottas, where because he's been in the sport so long, he knows a lot about the sport and he's able to help like younger drivers. But I guess in the case of VCarb, Yuki's not a young driver, and quite frankly, Yuki's doing better than Danny Rick this season.
but yeah, Daniel hasn't had a competitive car in years.
Yeah, but like even on the case of just like the car he's in, like you still have to be able to outperform your teammate, and he's not even doing that.
Yeah, that's true. Not,
Um,
I have nothing to say there. I love Danny Rick, and I don't know.
it's
His
tough.
performance
It's
is
tough to see him
sad.
struggle, yeah. But
Yeah,
in
he
reality, like
performed better in Canada after those comments. I feel
yes,
like it lit a little fire under his butt,
hmm
but
yeah, we just need someone
I,
to relentlessly just like just
yeah,
absolutely maul the guy with negative comments, and then we'll be okay.
I
um,
mean, yeah,
on the other side of that garage
it's fine.
though, Yuki did get his new contract extension in Canada, um, which
Okay.
means that they are contemplating whether or not they're planning on keeping Danny Rick for next season or not. They have three other drivers waiting. Um, Obviously, the most likely one would be Liam Lawson since he did prove that he can
I
drive.
would like to see him in the seat.
But you
That
don't
was
like the
so hard
boy
for me to
without a
say.
seat.
That was so hard for me to say.
Yeah. The other two
I'll
drivers
just
they have
I'll
in the
keep it at
wings
that.
are Ayuma Iwasa, who has been, I think he went over to Japanese Super Formula after his recent F2 season last year, where he got, I want to say, third or fourth place. It was a really good
Okay.
showing from him. I do hope he does get the chance to. Actually, he did drive a V carb last year. And I think he might be he drove one this year as well. Actually, he did a
And
practice session in Japan, where they for one
oh yeah,
session V carb got to have an all Japanese lineup, so that was really cool.
yeah, that is
Um,
cool.
yeah, they've just got a lot of drivers on the wait, and I feel like there's a lot of talent there. Yeah, I don't know. Danny Rick, if he manages to pull ahead of Yuki somehow, that would be nice to see. But I think the reality of the situation is he is actually driving for a seat. One person who's not
Yeah.
driving for their seat and who's probably going to be out of a seat at the end of the season is Logan Sargent.
There's nothing he can do at this point.
Nope. Um,
He is not performing well
yeah. So talking
at
on
all.
Williams, they did bring the Raptor upgrades in Canada. They did do fantastic. It was actually the Ferrari's fault that they, well,
Oh,
okay,
for sure.
yeah. Carlos
About
screwed
Alex.
Alex, yeah, and then Logan,
Logan was his own thing.
yeah, he doesn't drive well in the wet. Um, the thing about this
Drive well,
weekend,
period.
I came into this weekend kind of hopeful because I was like, they were doing really well last race. Hopefully they do well this race. But I was also kind of cautious about it, given that last year it was the same way where they did really well in Canada, and then in Spain they were back of the field. Um,
Yeah.
I was
So,
expected, but the thing
yeah,
that Logan Sargent that kind of throws me for the looper is that Logan was the very last car out in Q1, meaning he had the best position to be in. There was no
he
traffic.
still got P20, right?
He got P20 and he was still 4 tenths off his teammate, who went out before anybody else did for his last lap.
He doesn't deserve to be in the sport anymore. He has
Mm-mm.
had his chance.
Yes, he's cost Williams a lot, and quite frankly, like you can see the development, but it's not fast enough. It's not good enough. Um, yeah, it's just not there.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
realistically, we might get two
what do you think they're gonna
performances.
do?
They've got to look for a new driver. Genuinely
What,
speaking, I hope it's not Andrea
Carlos?
Campanelli.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't want that. Um, I'd prefer it if we pulled somebody from our own academy. We have Franco Colapinto, Zach O'Sullivan. Zach O'Sullivan can't get into the sport yet just because he's an F3 driver, but Colapinto has won 2 races in F2 already, along with a sprint. So I wouldn't mind seeing
you don't
him.
think Carlos is gonna sign?
Well, I was getting there. I think the most
Oh,
realistic option
okay.
is Carlos, just because similar to he's very close in age to Alex. I think Alex is 27 or 28, and Carlos is 29, 30. Um, they're very similar in their experiences in that they both started off at Toro Rosso. and worked alongside Max.
Hmm.
One's a race winner. One was close to being a podium finisher until Lewis happened. Um, so I think it'd be good experience wise. The team would look a lot like Haas at that point, just two really experienced drivers. Um, but yeah, I
But
would like.
definitely like a tier ahead of Haas
Oh
with the
yeah,
driver
100%.
lineup.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, no
definitely.
offense, Big Mag and
Nico.
Hulkenberg.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, that's the most realistic. That's what I would like. I don't want. It's nothing against the kid, but I don't want a Mercedes driver as the second driver for Williams.
I think he's going to Mercedes.
It wouldn't shock me. They
I
already
think they've
lost
set it
one.
up.
Yeah, they've already lost one
uh,
young driver to another team, and they're not willing to do that again. So, could you imagine losing Max to Red Bull and watching them win three
Um,
world championships?
no,
Yeah.
that would be
So
hard,
I think they're trying to avoid that from
hard to
happening
do.
again. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, now that that's all out of the way, let's get down to the fun parts. Mercedes, or not Mercedes, sorry, McLaren and Red Bull. These two teams are throwing it out with haymakers and sluggers, and it is fantastic. First off, because these are one of them is your favorite team, what are your thoughts on how everything's going, where the drivers are, and what could potentially happen over the next couple races since it is a triple header?
Yeah, I mean, if their performance can stay up, which the team has created a beautiful car. This car is working so well for both drivers, and it's down to driver error at this point with the start in the race. Um, I was so excited to see Lando on pole position yesterday. It just it, I was like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. He's got it. He's got it. He did it, and the car just couldn't even believe that someone could get a faster time than Max at this point. I was like, there's no way. Max just really eked out a great lap there. And I mean, Piastri went off during qualifying, which was just so unfortunate. But the next couple races, I think Oscar will kind of rise to the occasion and get closer to Lando. And Max and Lando are going to go head to head, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, so the next two race weekends we have Austria and Silverstone, not in that order, I don't think. Both these tracks are very conventional tracks. They not very many safety cars or whatnot get called out just because there's a lot of gravel traps, grass.
Yeah.
My favorite kind of tracks, honestly. Um, I guess how do you feel going into these with the current like way that McLaren's looking? I don't think they're planning on bringing any upgrades to either of these races that they've announced at least.
As long as Red Bull doesn't bring any upgrades and can be a dogfight, head to head, Max and Lando. I think Silverstone's going to be a great place for Lando, his home race. He'll be on a podium, I'm sure, unless something happens, because the pace is there.
Mhm.
So it's looking good.
Mhm. Um, I guess getting off of Max and Lando for a second, just because they do have teammates. How do you think
Ugh,
Oscar and Sergio will fare for this?
I think Oscar is going to catch up, is what I'm thinking. He really has been a perfect match for Lando. And now that Lando is won, I think Oscar wants to try to accomplish that as well. The cars are just perfectly set up for this situation to unfold.
Mhm.
And Checo, I mean, with that three-place grid penalty because of Red Bull's antics in Canada, he still is not performing
Mhm.
what Red Bull might hope, you know, what anyone would expect from a Red Bull driver. He did get his contract extension, so it's a little bit mind-boggling. But if it works, they gel well, Max and Checo, for the team anyway. But I mean, if Checo doesn't step up in these next couple of races, it's the the constructors championship might slip away from Red Bull a little bit.
Mhm.
It has been, right? I mean, he hasn't scored in the last couple races prior to this, so
Yep. Um, Looking at it standings wise, I made a mistake. Mercedes is in fourth, McLaren is in third. It just shows McLaren Mercedes, so I get a little mixed up sometimes. Right now, Lando, as you pointed out, officially took second place in the driver standings, sitting at 150, 2 points ahead of Charles, and 69 points behind Max. So there's a bit of ground to make up there. Obviously, we have to hope for Max to mess up and Lando to capitalize on those mistakes for this gap to
Hmm.
close down. Because realistically speaking, that's a good 8 to 10 races that Lando would have to consistently do better than Max in order to beat him out.
I don't think he's going to beat Max this year. I really hope, but a second in the Drivers' Championship would just be phenomenal for next season to
Yeah.
start off that way.
And then in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren's actually in third behind Ferrari by 33 points. So it's 270,
Yeah.
237. And then Red Bull are ahead of Ferrari by another 60. So McLaren's sitting about close to 100 points behind Red Bull in that Constructor standing. I think it's more realistic to hope that McLaren can get even closer than Ferrari are to Red Bull by the end of the season.
Hmm.
Probably not in the driver standings. I don't see Lando winning the championship this year, just because it is Max, it is Red Bull, and they are still for even for everything that's been going on and like how close teams are getting. Realistically, Max is still winning by those 2 seconds, regardless of what race it's at. So,
Yeah,
um,
but at least it's 2 seconds, not 20 seconds.
that is fair. It does make it a lot more exciting, and especially with all the
A lot more
background events
exciting.
happening.
Yeah.
Red Bull are planning on bringing a track-specific wing to both Austria and Silverstone. McLaren are bringing a track-specific one to Silverstone, but they're using a previous iteration for Austria.
I hope that McLaren bring a new one-off livery for Silverstone.
Yes,
Maybe go back to the chrome. I don't know,
yes.
but that seems to be good luck for them.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the cool thing about it is that this year, every single time McLaren brings a new livery, it happens at the same time that they bring a B spec car. Last year it happened at Silverstone. They brought back the chrome colored McLaren, to bring back like those 2008 to 2012 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the car
Vodafone.
performed
Yeah.
like those 2008 and 2012 years. And then this year they brought the Senna livery to Monaco right after giving Oscar his upgrades as well, and they were doing really well there too. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, looking at it, as far as wins this season, Max has 7 wins. No shock there. That's
But
125
it
points.
doesn't feel like it though.
Oh
It
no, it
feels
does.
better than that. It feels better than that though.
Oh yes, points
I don't
wise, it
know.
feels better, but realistically speaking, it's like there's still a realization that out of the 10 rounds this year, he has won 7 of them. Each Ferrari driver has taken a win this year. Spectacular drives all around, and then Lando took the win in Miami. I think one of the things we can definitely note is that the races are getting closer and closer.
Hmm.
What started off in Bahrain as wins by 10, 12 seconds, we're getting down to these 2 second ones. And realistically, I think if Lando would have come into the pits 3 laps sooner, after his first stint, he would have been probably within DRS range of Max for the last lap. But they held on to those for a bit longer than needed, and but we're not tire strategists, so maybe 2 seconds was the
We
best they
don't
could have
know
done.
for sure.
Yeah. Looking forward, like I said, we have the rest of the triple header, all conventional tracks, easily fan favorites on all of them. Should expect a huge amount of fighting, split between probably 3 groups in Austria.
Hmm.
Obviously the front 6, we'll say, maybe 8, depending. It really depends on how Ferrari is feeling that day. um,
Yeah,
yeah,
Charles was even complaining about strategy, and then that's just where you go, oh no, there's two things going wrong,
yeah,
like the car and the strategy. And then you go, I'm so glad that I'm not a main Ferrari fan because
yeah.
it's really hard.
So
Feel
we
for all of you
have.
Ferrari fans out there.
I mean, realistically, we can probably say 7, just because I'm not expecting Checo to be in that fight with the other drivers.
Yeah, I don't
He's
know.
kind of like that standalone. Like, there's the rest of the best, and then there's Checo, and then there's the best drivers.
He's
Um,
fighting like the last point scores, and we're like,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Um, but yeah, so we should expect a pretty close fight. I'm actually gonna assume for Austria, it's gonna be a closer fight between the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. I think with the nature of the slow speed corners in turn 2 and 4, and maybe one if you really want to count as a slow speed is more of a medium speed corner. I think that the Ferraris will get a bit of extra help there, along with their straight line speed that they
Well,
have.
I'll still say McLaren is going to be fighting for second
Yeah.
and first place.
Um, I think one graphic that really tips everything for me is that like uh the qualifying in Spain, there was Lando, who was 200ths of a second faster than Max, who was on 3/10 faster than the next driver. It's like there's that large of a gap. It kind of feels like it's getting towards those like Max Lewis days, but with different
Hmm.
teams. And it's kind of fun to see. Um,
So fun.
yeah, and I don't think either of the second
Great.
drivers are able to interfere as much with the proceedings.
Ah, Oscar just had a bad qualifying session.
His race
I know
wasn't
he's
that
been a
great
little
either.
behind. Ah,
I think something was off with his car or him this weekend. He was not on it. He struggled
didn't
through
hear
all
so
three free
much
practice.
either.
Yeah, he struggled through all three free practices. Like didn't just wasn't comfortable in the car. Maybe it's a track specific
Hopefully he
thing.
can bounce back.
Yeah. Last year I think he struggled at this track as well. So maybe
Okay.
it's a track specific thing, but like because every driver has their one track that they just don't do well on. Max is Singapore, obviously. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems like a thing with him. And it might be due to the fact that this is also one of the tracks that he didn't get to race at in F2.
Uh,
Yeah, they are here this weekend, and I actually don't know what the results were for the F2 championship, but um,
I do know that a Haas driver won for the F1 Academy,
I
and
didn't know they had an academy.
The American, the U.S. anthem was played. I heard it on social media, and I was like, "Whoa, that's weird. Haven't heard that."
That sounds weird. Hold on a minute. Let me see this.
Hmm.
Um, Chloe Chambers won.
Hmm.
Oh, look at that. Um,
Haas.
Even more
So they
shocking
played.
by the fact that she won that race is that Abby Pulling won every single other session.
Yeah. What? Who's the girl that is very, very good in F1 Academy? I think she got injured, right?
There's a lot of them.
Who was dominating the first part of F1 Academy this season
Oh, Dorian Pin,
for
the Mercedes
Mercedes.
driver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think she got injured.
I don't.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Was she racing?
Let me check through it real quick.
Because I know she
Um,
was going to be doing some like wreck driving, but then I think she had to pull out of that.
I am not sure. It doesn't say whether or not she's injured. Um, the
Does it
thing is,
did it show a time for the
she
race?
did really well during the first couple. They haven't actually
Hmm.
raced since Saudi Arabia. So
Yeah.
they're at F2. So I don't know for sure. One thing to note though is that outside of Dorian Pin, there are actually a lot of great drivers in the series.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Most notably Abby Pulling. I mean, she was touted as like a potential F3, F2 driver when she was 15.
Yeah. I
She
hope
is,
she'll make it next year, maybe.
yeah, she is sitting in first place of the championship, 70 points clear
Good.
of Dorian Pin.
Yeah. Wow.
Dorian Pin was racing, by the way. She just did not do well.
Okay.
She's
That's
actually tied with Chloe
sad to hear.
Chambers.
Okay.
So, um, for those of you who don't know, for some reason, F1 Academy is an all-female series.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All super young drivers. So it's very similar to an F4 spec, almost F3 spec series. It's somewhere in between those two, but I think the driver who wins the F1 Academy gets don't want to say this officially, don't quote me on this, but I think they get sponsored for an F4 or F3 drive. I want to say that's where
Hope
last year's
so.
driver went. Um, but yeah, each team is supporting one driver each. And then there are drivers who are also supported by individual groups.
Oh, the
Charlotte and Pillsbury.
Charlotte Tilbury
Yeah.
is that's a great,
Yes.
great, great livery.
I think there's a Tommy Hilfiger one, and a few others. And then
Mhm.
also on top of that, every single race they have one of the native drivers actually drive a car as well. So meaning that like if they're in Bahrain, one of their people drive the car. Same with Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, the person actually got 11th in the second
Ooh,
race, and then there's obviously a Spanish one, and so the next races there will also be. They don't race again until Zandvoort in August, so
okay.
we won't get to see more of them, but a lot of them do things on the side. So
Hmm.
hoping to see more of them in the future.
On a tangential topic, Jamie Chadwick won an Indy Next race while we were on our hiatus. Yes,
That is
she won.
fantastic.
She's racing for Andretti, I believe,
Yes.
and she. That's been like a while since a woman has won an Indy Next race, so she made
Yeah,
history. And
that's
yeah,
fantastic. I
she's
mean,
awesome. I love watching her race.
I do want to see her like move into like better cars, like just watch her move into IndyCar. And it'd be kind of cool to see her as
It's
like
gonna
an
be awesome.
actual reserve driver or one day as an actual driver. I think she's probably the
Hmm.
most realistic option right now as far as
Yeah,
female drivers go, but it's good to see like the nature of
yeah.
everything moving forward.
I
Um,
feel like if she was born a couple of years later, like I feel like she would capitalize really well on all of this. But I think she's definitely influential in making these things happen and making people realize that
mhm.
women can be really really great race drivers. So
Yes.
yeah, it
Oh,
is what it
speaking of
is.
women race drivers, one of the commentators for F1 got to talk to one of the coolest people in the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. I forgot what her name was. She's like 80
Oh
something years
yes,
old. Um,
yeah.
she got to talk
Let
about
me.
her
I
driving
sent that to you.
days.
Let me see.
It was one of the coolest things. She was one of the first women drivers in virtually any racing sport ever. I don't know if she ever won. I think she won two championships. But it was just really cool. Um, yeah, I don't know what her name was or anything, but I'll definitely have
Oh,
to
here,
find it.
here we go. Mary McGee.
Mary McGee,
Mary McGee. She got to meet Lewis Hamilton at the Canadian Grand Prix.
one of the coolest people ever. Yes, that's one of the coolest things ever.
Hmm.
She competed in motorcycle racing, sports car racing. She raced in
Desert
nine
racing.
different types of cars. She raced across looks like 10 or 11 states. Um, it's
She
just
finished the Baja 500 solo. She
it's
raced in the
so cool.
Baja 1000. She's friends with Steve McQueen. Like
Mm.
what a lady. 87 years
And
old.
she raced into the early 2000s, like when she was in her
Yeah,
60s.
that's wild.
Yeah, I was like, that's insane. You don't hear people driving
That's
in
a
their
movie
60s.
I'd watch.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be a really cool documentary. Speaking of that,
Hmm.
the F1 documentary is coming out soon. I don't know if it's already out, but I think it's Apple TV. Um,
Oh, that definitely is not out.
yeah,
What do you mean? The Brad Pitt one?
yes, they already talked
No,
about
no way.
release dates. Let me
But it's
double
definitely
check.
not out yet. It's definitely like 2025 or something.
Release date. Hold on, because they already actually did a thing about this. June 2025 is what they're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was thinking. It's not out.
But yeah, so that's everything that's going on in F1 Academy F1.
Yeah. We'll
I
try to
guess,
be back for next race weekend, but who
yeah,
knows? We're busy people.
yeah.
Hard to get on the same schedule.
Also, it might be a little awkward. I know next week for sure I'll be able to do it, but oh, predictions. Give me predictions for next week's podium.
Max, Lando, Carlos.
Okay. And if you had to give me one, give me a one for the following weekend.
And that's well, which one is which? Which
Let's see. It is Austria's next week, and then
okay.
Silverstone's the following.
Silverstone, we're gonna go Lando. We're gonna do an all British lineup. We're gonna go Lando, Lewis, and I gotta say George then.
I don't think there's another British driver, is there? So,
That's what I'm going with, and that would be cool to see. Something has to happen to Max, obviously. It has happened to Max before.
yeah. For Austria, I'm gonna say Max Charles Carlos, and for Silverstone, I'm gonna say Max Lando George.
Okay.
Yeah, going against Max winning in conventional tracks is suicide. He might not do well on street races, and he might not do well with, tracks like Singapore or whatever, right? But I mean, he
There's always room for outside in.
actually, let me put it this way: the 3 races that he's lost this year are all street races. So
Okay.
he's won at every conventional track this year.
Okay. Well, there's no penalty for me just hoping for the best.
No, hope is what keeps the sport alive. Let me know what you guys think about the predictions, everything that's going on. And if you stayed to the end of the video, let me know who you think is. Give me one driver who's currently not in the sport that's going to end up in a seat next year. Also,
That's good.
if you want to see them, here are the standings, the driver standings. They'll be on the screen, so you can pause if you need to or whatever. But see you guys next week, and until next time.
Here we go.